Welcome to the panel Citizens, Initiatives, PPPs or Centralized Governance, Best Practices from Smart Cities Around the World. My name is Karen Lessmann and I am the project lead for the model project Smart Cities at the Berlin Senate Chancellery. Since September 2020, Berlin can call itself a model project Smart City. The Federal Ministry of the Interior, Building and Communities started this program in 2019, and due to the success in 2020, Berlin receives a funding of 17.5 million euros from 2020 to 2026. The funding period is divided into two phases. Phase A lasts 2 years with the goal of creating a new smart city strategy for Berlin. Phase B, which starts next year, lasts 5 years with the aim of successfully realizing 5 individual pilot projects that will be closely linked to the smart city strategy. The smart city strategy is written in a new way, especially for public service and politicians. We participate the people of Berlin and ask them about their ideas for the smart city of Berlin. This comprehensive participatory process includes the different stakeholder groups in Berlin, as there are political actors in public administration, businesses and startups, research and education, organized civil society, and the so-called silent groups. International exchange is also an important source of inspiration, and I am very happy that we can continue this international exchange of opinions also in today's best practice session. Saying this, I would like to welcome Brigitte Lutz, Data Governance Coordinator from the City of Vienna, Noel Hidalgo, Executive Director BetaNYC, Rope Mocker, Co-founder Demos Helsinki, Gabriela Gomez-Mont, Founder and Principal at Experimentalista, Charles Lin, Deputy Mayor Kaohsiung City, Leonie van den Boyken, Program Director Amsterdam Smart City, and Judith Weenkamp, Head of Program and Lead Smart Citizens Lab at WAAG. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your experiences.
Hi, my name is Leonie van den Boyken and I'm a Program Director of Amsterdam Smart City. And I'm so delighted to join you here in this great opportunity of sharing thoughts and knowledges together with Judith from the WAAG. And Amsterdam Smart City is an innovation ecosystem, and we use smart techniques for better cities, for better regions even. And we do so with a strong belief that, well, the world is changing and it's changing fast, but actually not fast enough. So we truly believe that if we want to make change happen, good change even, we need to redefine our way of working together. We need to have an open and safe place where people can cooperate and innovate in new ways. And we are one of these open and safe spaces. And what we are is an quite unique, independent, public-private partnership cooperation, and we have the so-called quadruple helix presence. So corporations, governments, corporates, but very proud also to have societal organizations. So all what we do in innovation really gets landed within society. And we are connected with a community worldwide. And we as a network do not innovate ourselves. We are just the platform, the accelerator. And I just have here, you can read a couple of one of our many projects our partners are working on together. And what binds them together, it's all about using technology for better cities, for better regions with people. So whatever you innovate needs to be adaptable, understandable, usable for the people using it and create public value. And how do we do this? Well, for us, innovating, how do you know when it's right? Well, for us, it's values first. So whatever you do, it needs to be citizen central, human central even. It needs to create public value. So streets get better, air gets cleaner, people can meet each other in an open and transparent and explorative way of working. And we have some key elements of innovation design. We are here already for 12 years now. So we have seen how does innovation really work. Well, like I said already, this value-driven is very important. Being human-centric, very essential to keep this in mind. And also, and Judith's going to talk more about that, always keep this symbiosis on a social and technological innovation in mind. Both work together. And then what we do is have this multi-stakeholder cooperation always embedded in an ecosystem. And the last couple of points I really would love to stress, and Judith will elaborate much more on this. When you really want to have this innovation in a different way, meaningful, what we have learned, it really takes perseverance, because it takes time. It takes time to open up, and also for us, like we are connected with governments, for example. This cooperation system needs people to have an open mindset, to be curious, but also to have the willingness and the ableness to change. Well, how you can do this, I will pass over the words to Judith. We're very happy to work with WAAG for a long time already. And Judith, you will take us along one of the projects you're working on for a long time already, which is a great example of opening up institutions, trying, improving, and improving again. So, well, thank you very much already. And Judith, please take it further. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Leonie. And we're also very happy to have been working with you, of course. We're part of the network that Leonie just explored. I myself work at WAAG, which is a public research institute. Basically, we focus on, well, the research that we do focuses on the impact of technology on society. And me, myself, I'm leading the Smart Citizens Lab. And today I want to take you along in one of the projects that we're deeply involved in, which is Hollandse Luchten, which translates as Dutch skies, where we have gained quite a lot of experience on how to work with citizens and how to provide them with the technological tools. This comes from, well, the Smart Citizens Lab that I'm leading. Basically, the hypothesis is that we should enable citizens to take technology up and to use it for their benefits. So we create smart citizens rather than smart cities. And we work, well, basically always the starting point is a societal challenge or people who are concerned with something in their own lives and their own neighborhoods. And this particular project, Hollandse Luchten, Dutch Skies, focuses on air quality in the Eimond region, which is in the province of North Holland. It's on the northwest side of, well, just above the Amsterdam area. And there is I think it's the second largest steel factory in Europe. And they are one of the biggest polluter in the Netherlands. So they produce a lot of steel, but also a lot of air pollution. And the citizens, well, the people living there actually live really close to the factory grounds, as you can see in this picture. And if we see sort of a map on how they are located, you see the pink area. So the factory is called Tata Steel. That's the pink area. And then, well, there's urban area, living area very closely to the factory grounds, especially Wijk aan Zee, which is the little swart black village that you see in the the northeast corner, the north. So it's a coastal village, and especially the people over there are really concerned with their health, with the air quality, the air that they're daily breathing in. And this has been a challenge for many years, but it got more severe, or the relations got more tense. About 2.5 years ago, when there were very frequently there was this sort of graphite rain. You can see it on the picture on the left. It was this sort of silvery dust that people found, well, back on their window frames, the playgrounds where their children were playing, and they really asked themselves, like, okay, this can't be healthy. What is this? And the situation should improve. So they really they took upon their sort of their protest attitude and the relations between the citizens, the government, and also the factory got more complicated. And well, we're here at the Creative Bureaucracy Festival, and this is sort of the bureaucratic scheme that surrounds the factory, the steel factory, and the sort of the giving the permits, the monitoring if certain norms are being kept by the factory. And as you can imagine, it is really, really hard for a citizen to navigate this system. So who do you talk to when you want your living area to improve, you want your air quality to improve? It's actually quite a puzzle to find the right person to talk to. And so this was the context in which we started working, and we said, like, okay, maybe we should create a platform, a citizen sensing network where a citizen can collect air quality measurements themselves, collect the data themselves in close collaboration with scientists, with policymakers, with also the factory, and maybe this can then provide a new situation and improve the situation also, or at least the relation, and then also the situation locally. So we designed and assembled a sensor for citizens to actually sense, to measure the air quality themselves, and they were invited to actually own the sensor, and thus also become a data owner. And it's quite important to mention here that this sort of public research that we started up, that we see society as the research community. So it's this was one of the issues. Still is one of the issues. Official bodies often have very smart and skilled people working on research, collecting data, analyzing it, producing really thick and complicated reports, but they don't really have the impact that you would want. It's very hard for citizens to understand what is going on, what it means, etc. So this sort of citizen science, citizen sensing approach is basically making explicitly space for citizens to become part of the research and to work on societal impacts. And we set up a working method where in co-creation sessions, citizens together with other stakeholders, the local governments, policymakers, scientists, air quality specialists, etc., came together and basically set out a sensing strategy and decided, like, what do we want to get out of this project? What do we want to know? What kind of questions do we have? And where should we then locate the sensors that we have available? And this is the sensor that we built at Waag. This is the insights, and it's all open hardware. So this is one of the things that we really strive for at our organization, is to have a knowledge open and to also provide all the insights on hardware design, software design, etc. We even provided them in sort of an IKEA box where the citizens were then invited to assemble the sensor themselves. So they actually got to work with the sensor, understood what type of components were in them, what is for what the functionality is, and also how to maintain them. So and this is what we experience often, then the relation also to this technology changes in opposition to when you buy something off the shelf and you have it hanging there and it collects the data. The other thing that we did was to build a sort of an intuitive data visualization. So you could quite easily find your own sensor and sort of see what kind of data you're collecting, but also see other sensors that are close to you or a bit further away, and to understand what the levels are that you're measuring. Once we sort of facilitated this whole technical infrastructure, and we collected the first bit of data. We analyzed the data together with the whole group. So we really, it's a technical approach, but it's even more important. It's a community approach where you start locally. You have community champions. We did a train the trainer program, and we tried to embed it in the local foreground, in the local setting, the local neighborhood, working with libraries, etc., schools, and enthusiastic citizens. So, well, what we did was we have a citizen-driven network for measuring air quality in a pilot setting, a platform for citizen participation, and very important, a prototype for participatory policymaking. And this is then also, so this is all the work that we did. And now we have the data. We have very much citizens that are very involved and highly committed to this sensing network. And also governments enthusiastic, like, okay, this is interesting data. We can do something with it. But what do we then do? So how do we open up the system world to take this, on the one hand, the data that is coming out of this sensing network, but also the knowledge that is, well, with the local experts, the citizens living there on a daily basis, understanding their own environments, and how can we, well, make that valuable to the way governments work, and have this sort of take up as something that is sustained and yeah, that we can build upon and skill up and learn from. This is yeah, I wanted to share with you the sort of the daily practices of a project like this, but also the once you start on this journey, you find more and more questions, and these are the challenges that we're working with currently. Thank you very much for your attention and your time, and yeah, this was the presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Judith, for this great insight. You know, I'm a real fan of Hollandse Lucht because it's really a way of opening up organizations and cooperating on improving this air quality. I think you gave a great insight. I hope to learn more from you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Noel Hidalgo. I'm coming to you from New York City, and I'm the executive director of an organization called BetaNYC. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about some of the work that we do here in New York. BetaNYC is a civic organization improving lives in New York City through civic technology, design, and open data. Our work fundamentally supports the city in achieving digital literacy and open data. Through a community-led process almost 8 years ago, we oriented and rooted ourselves in 4 fundamental freedoms. These are the 4 freedoms for our digital New York City: the freedom to connect, the freedom to learn, the freedom to innovate, and the freedom to collaborate. These 4 freedoms are core to all of our operations. We don't do work if it doesn't intersect with all 4 of these. The reason why is through our community dialogue and discussions, we put at the core improving New Yorkers and improving the systems that support New Yorkers. One of the great community organizers in North America, Cesar Chavez, is quoted as saying, "The fight is never about grapes or lettuce, it's always about people." We're fundamentally here to support human activity and improve human activity. And so our fight in our smart cities work is to connect and empower New Yorkers so that way they can empower themselves. Our mission is to work with a broad stakeholder group, not only work with the city and not only work with corporations, but also to work with civil society and New Yorkers themselves who are volunteering to improve their neighborhoods. What we've developed is a responsive ecosystem around open data and civic technology. We found ourselves in a really weird situation once we got the city's open data law passed. Was how do you get somebody to use the open data? And so kind of getting that data out allowed us to have some user testing and to realize that, oh, while the data's there, it's not accessible to everyone. And so that helped us better understand what we needed to do to help demystify open data, ultimately build tools, ultimately build literacy and language, and then that helps us continue to do our work that we do. And so what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is exactly how we do that through 3 of our programs. Through the very scary and uncertain time that we had during COVID, this ecosystem was able helped the city do rapid response in a number of different angles. I would love to talk in depth about that, but I will just shortly say we are very unique in our ability to put out a help desk request form, which we call radars, and be able to respond to cities' needs. So as I started, what we focus on is improving digital literacy and inclusion across New York City. We have 3 core programs that enable this. The first is our Civic Innovation Fellows and Apprenticeship Program. Second is how we do tech support, called Radars. And lastly is our Open Data Ambassadors Program. Our Civic Innovation Fellows and Fellows and Apprenticeship Program is focused on building the next generation of New Yorkers who are digitally literate and really passionate about including technology into civics. The program is broken up into 2 different semesters. The first semester is about more or less teaching them the language and skills that they need to use in the second semester. And we've been able to do this for the last 8 years, and we're really looking forward to doing it again in the next for the next 8 years. As fellows essentially learn literacy and they learn to work inside of a collaborative and supportive environment, there are unique talents that we want to more or less build up. And so we've developed this apprenticeship program that focuses on mentorship, professional development, project management, and technical skills. And this is what's really cool. So once we've had fellows for a year and we've selected a few apprentices, they're now able to provide tech support for the rest of New York City. In the middle of the pandemic, what was a program that was really geared toward supporting government operations turned out to be something that was needed by the rest of New Yorkers. And so Radars is a help desk service that brings the power of data and technology not only to New York City government, but to nonprofit organizations and to community-based organizations. This has resulted in tools which are essentially assistive in open data, but also just helping people understand what's inside of open data and how they can use it for their advocacy or their communications. Since the launch in 2018, we've been able to do 100 radars. And now let me show you a few examples as my time is running out. Community board demographic analysis. In New York City, we have these land use councils, which are filled with volunteers. And historically, they're supposed to represent the neighborhoods that they are overseeing land use issues in. But when you look at the demographics, they're not always representative of that. And so what we've done is create a comprehensive package that essentially looks at the demographics of a neighborhood, looks at the demographics of a community board, and then helps elected officials appoint the individuals that better represent the community district. Another tool that we came out through Radars is protecting vulnerable religious facilities. We live in a very, very small city with a lot of predatory real estate development. And we have more and more of a secular society. And so as religious organizations were seeing a decrease in population, they were becoming susceptible for predatory development. And what we did is we joined this task force to essentially look at the very core issues of what were the lot sizes, what were their air use rights, how could this land essentially be taken advantage of? What were the locations that were facing high cost of maintenance? What were in prime communities that had been upzoned? And we turned and churned all of this data and turned it back to the religious communities so that way they could see that they were in a community or next to a community that was at vulnerable. You can find all of these stories on our website at beta.nyc, just to put that out there. Another tool that we've been able to turn around is looking at 311 data, right? So looking at how people are calling in and complaining or responding to community issues. So we built this simple dashboard called BoardStat. Now, all of this work helps us understand exactly what New Yorkers need and want. And then we've turned around a program so that way we can demystify the tools, the language, and help build a whole ecosystem around open data, so that way we are becoming smarter and smarter and smarter. And what's really cool about our Open Data Ambassadors program is that it gives us an opportunity to talk to digitally or data literate New Yorkers, and then further unpack the complex issues, which is municipal data and technology inside of an urban environment, and then have them go out and speak in their voice to their communities, so that way they can represent more or less what civic technology and open data is all about. Since we launched this program, we've been able to reach over 2,000 New Yorkers, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Hello, and thank you. To be frank, no one is really interested in smart city. It's kind of a dead, but it seems no one's really come up with a better narrative either. Therefore, we at Demos Helsinki propose that we could start talking about people-first cities. This people-first approach is about how to put people, not technology, at the center of digital development in cities. In the next few minutes, I will be speaking about the work that we have conducted with some of the biggest cities in Nordic, as well as Barcelona in particular. From this work, spanning a decade now, we have distilled this people-first approach. It is really about governance, how to govern cities in this digital era that we are living. But why people first? Let's look back a few years to understand the massive shift in technology and how technology is governed, and increasingly how it is used to govern people. Around 10 years ago, cities started getting interested in optimizing their services through digital technologies, through monolithic systems, control rooms that many providers were marketing to them. This is where the term smart city initiates from. This, frankly, led nowhere. It was too cumbersome, it was too expensive, and only a few really powerful applications emerged. After that came the age of apps and data. The idea that instead of these big control rooms, anyone could build an app that feeds with data, including public sector data. Soon enough, however, the most powerful apps became the most powerful companies in the world, the most powerful companies in the history of mankind even. Now there is roughly 10 super platforms, all of which originate from Silicon Valley and China. This last third phase of smart city really changed it all. These large platforms have started to take control of the city without cities even, in many cases, paying much notice. Consequently, many of the benefits of the digitalization do not go to cities, but to your Google's, Facebook, Tencent's, Huawei's, Apple's, Facebook, Amazon's, and so forth. COVID has only accelerated this power shift, making citizens reliant on digital service providers. They have now the best data. They are now capable of delivering the best services and impacting people's behavior. This, with no democratic control in sight, actually quite the opposite. Big tech got there partly because the incredible amounts of capital they have in their use, but most importantly, for being absolute masters of user-centric thinking. This, however, should not be confused with people-centric thinking. In people-centric thinking, there are two sides. There is the user perspective, and then there's the citizen perspective. In the user perspective, governance sees people's needs as something that should be met as fully as possible without ever really bothering them. It is about the seamlessness of service delivery. It is about life-based events, services just emerging when they are needed. Then there is the citizen perspective. Here, people have not just needs in terms of services, but they have needs in self-actualization that can only be met via free association and collaboration. This is about understanding each other. This is about forming opinions. This is about capacity to imagine what cities can be about. So this user and citizen must be brought into balance. This is at the core of user-centric, this is at the core of people first approach. Now they're not in balance. So let's have a look at a couple of cities that are leading in balancing these two. And you may soon notice that they have one thing in common. Barcelona has made people first approach strategic by adding a third leg to their smart city strategy under the leadership of Gabriela. All smart city strategies in the world have two components. They want to make service delivery more efficient, and they want to increase competitiveness of the area through business. Barcelona added here on the highest level of strategy and in the highest level of governance, citizens and communities. And citizens and communities as independent actors, not just receivers of services or workers and entrepreneurs. And plenty of great initiatives followed. It really kind of freed a lot of energy. Perhaps most importantly, the open source software work for developing applications that are not dependent of tech giants and their often exploitative business models. Tens of cities have now adopted this software and are developing it together. Tampere, then, that is, in my opinion, the leader of smart city governance in the Nordics, has in a similar way set citizens at the core of their smart city work. In a way, this goes far beyond participation. Tankred talks about collective engagement. It is firstly about sharing information and active dialogue with people, and secondly about developing the city and services with people, and then thirdly, it is about supporting communities and citizen action. These three principles can be understood as three areas of engaging with people: information, planning, and decision making. This is ingrained in the very strategy of the people and of the city, and it has also similarly to Barcelona set free plenty of great initiatives. The city, for example, offers support in planning of crowdfunding campaigns in such a way that once 60% of a certain crowdfunding campaign that is in the city strategy or following the goals of city strategy, the city completes the funding by contributing 40%. What we notice here is that these both cities have first managed to make this into a strategic issue, not a technical issue, and then plenty of applications have followed. So don't get me wrong, digital technologies are absolutely necessary for cities. To be able to take benefit of digitalization, cities, however, must go far beyond technology, and this means putting people first. To recap, my thesis are that this third phase of digitalization in cities is about governance. It is about a power struggle in which cities that focus on technology lose. Secondly, people-centricism is not same as user-centricism. It is about striking a balance between people and people as users and people as citizens. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charles Lin. I come from the city of Kaohsiung, the biggest one city in Taiwan in terms of its region areas, and is located in the southern Taiwan. I'm the deputy mayor of this city. 2021 is the century since the rename of the city of Kaohsiung from Takao. It is located in the southern of Taiwan. In the past, it mainly focused on traditional industries such as the steels, petrochemicals, deep sea fishing, etc. As Taiwan's industry developments has gradually transformed to technology, ICT, such as industry transformations, air pollution, etc. These topics become the focus of Kaohsiung City on the subject of the governors. Mayor Chen Qimai announced 4 governance principles, including industry transformations, increased employment, transportation infrastructure, and mitigating the air pollution problems. When he took office, Kaohsiung Smart City Strategy's goals satisfying the citizens' needs. We try to ensure their safety and increasing the citizens' improvements through smart technology implementations. Smart city innovative applications are people-oriented, provide Kaohsiung citizens with a comfortable environments with economic, social, and environment continuous developments. In the future, Kaohsiung City will present two primary focus. The first one is cooperating with the central government to build up a semiconductor industry supply chain in southern Taiwan. Through a combination with Kaohsiung's petrochemicals industry foundations, Kaohsiung City will have an important cluster effect on the global semiconductor manufacturers, as well as raw material development. The second is from southern Taiwan's international port city. Kaohsiung is transforming into an innovative Kaohsiung Bay Areas for international global output. This year, President Tsai came to southern Taiwan and initiated the Kaohsiung Bay Area 5G IoT Innovation Hub. The announcements that the central government will support over $350 million over the next 5 years to build the most comprehensive 5G IoT test field and a new global port for smart city solution are bounded. This is the beginning of a new era for Kaohsiung City, and it all starts with innovations. Last year, in order to optimize the current administrative framework, Kaohsiung City governments will gather experts from the industry, universities, research institute to found Kaohsiung Smart City Promotion Committee. The committee members including Andrew Tan, digital minister from Taiwan, telecom leaders such as Chonghua Telecoms and Far East Towns Telecoms, and CEOs from the top 100 companies around the world. Kaohsiung City governments also found the Kaohsiung Smart City Project Management Office, what we call this KPMO, and introduced a cross-bureau task force. The KPMO deeply understands the needs of all bureaus in Kaohsiung City governments and the needs of the citizens. Then through public-private partnerships, the KPMO assists all the bureaus to facilitate the implementations of smart, innovative applications which solve citizens' pain points. At the same time, the Kaohsiung Smart City Promotion Committee share their experience, connections, and resources to assist the smart city development projects. This helps provide Kaohsiung City government's smart developments a new dimensions. On the industry side, Kaohsiung City government called together international companies, including Microsoft, Cisco, and AWS, even the Siemens, etc., and then found Taiwan's 5G IoT International Alliance, building the most comprehensive 5G IoT test and demonstration fields, attracting expected investment over $1 billion. This alliance will create over $4 billion of production value per year. The central policies supported by $350 million over 5 years for the development of Kaohsiung Bay Area. This will, in the future, become engine that drive Kaohsiung's industry transformations. With the Kaohsiung light rail that turns through Kaohsiung Bay Area, being Taiwan's first light rails, it is not only decrease traffic and reduce the carbon footprint itself, it's beautiful scenery of Kaohsiung City port. Kaohsiung City government is also actively implementing more smart application on the light rails to build a paradigm of a city that is decarbonized in resilience and a green smart city. Next, I will introduce the challenge faced by the Kaohsiung City regarding the light rail and how through the implementation of a smart technology, we develop a safer public transportation and road environments. The first is the light rail smart detections, what we call the smart intersection anti-collisions. In the recent 5 years, and there are frequent incidents where motor vehicles unlawfully make turns which collide with the light rails, bring the total number of accidents to 26. This not only damaged the body of the light rail trans, but also affects traffic. Thus, the traffic bureaus of the Kaohsiung City government proposed the Smart Intersections Anti-Collision project, incorporating the image and sounds to alert the light rail's drivers about the incoming vehicles. This information alert systems can make alerts before a lawful right turns is made by a vehicle nearly 20 meters before the intersections and can predict with 90% accuracies to provide more times for the drivers to react to situations to prevent accidents from happening. This system reduced nearly 80% of the traffic accidents. With the advent of 5G eras, Kaohsiung City government is planning to deploy a 5G high broadband with edge computing servers to perform AI calculations and then send this safety alert message to all pedestrians to achieve broad and comprehensive intersection safety protections. Aside from unlawful turns made by vehicles, people, animals, and other drop items can also introduce into the light rail track. Furthermore, lowering land along the coastline is more prone to flooding. Thus, the mass rapid transit bureaus in Taiwan system, who are very experienced in smart monitoring corporations to implement foreign matters, intrusions, and the flood detection systems. Through the AI image recognition algorithms in real time, the system examines if there are such foreign matters right before the light rail trains pass by. The system then synchronizes the information to the operation control centers and adjusts the operations status accordingly. The KPMO facilitates the cross-bureaus cooperations between the transportation bureaus and the mass rapid transit bureaus. The two bureaus cooperated to jointly solve the anti-collision problems. Furthermore, the KPMO assists the mass rapid transit bureaus apply for national-level subsidies project to alleviate the bureau's finance burdens. The Kaohsiung Smart City Promotion Committee has rich experience and resources from the industry. The Kaohsiung Smart City Projects Management Office, who understand the needs of the bureaus, facilitate the public and private partnerships, and the cross-bureaus task force that coordinate the issues of the inter-bureaus and division of the labors are the three key elements to Kaohsiung Smart City success. Every March, Taiwan hosts a Smart Summit and Experts, which is Asia's largest international smart city export in 2022. We plan to highlight Kaohsiung Smart City applications, and the place will be located in Kaohsiung Bay Area 5G IoT Innovation Hub, the largest 5G IoT test field. Due to the pandemic, Kaohsiung City will most likely hold this as a hybrid event, which provide a virtual online exhibitions for international partners. Most importantly, we welcome everyone to come to Kaohsiung City to join Smart City Summit and Export 20 and 22 next March. When you come to Kaohsiung, my city, you will discover that the whole of the Kaohsiung City is in fact an exhibition in reality.
Hello, everybody. I am Gabriela Gomez-Montt, and I hail from Mexico City, though I'm now living in Amsterdam. And from 2013 to 2018, I was the Chief Creative Officer for Mexico City. So I led a wonderful team of 20 people, half of them from urban sciences, half of them from the humanities, so everything from urban geographers to artists working together to think of solutions for the city. Nowadays, I head a new type of organization that's working with cities the world over that's called Experimentalista. So working with cities in Asia, in Latin America, and in Europe, and developing different concepts. And one of the projects that I'm working on right now is with Kiosks Foundation, doing research on urban futures in a digital world. So there's many overlaps between what you heard of my other panelists, but I wanted to offer up a little bit of a provocation from my neck of the woods, because it's been incredibly interesting to see what is happening the world over, especially with special emphasis in the emerging world, and try to think about what this crossroad between the urban and the digital, that are two of the biggest forces shaping humanity right now, what is happening in there, what is possible. So one of the first things that we saw in desk research and a lot of interviews is the fact that we have a sequestered imagination going on. So many things that have to do with cities and the digital are framed under the smart city paradigm. And if you do a quick Google research, this is more or less what comes up. So it turns out that our cities and our futures are blue and mostly peopleless. So one of the first things that I would like to offer up as a provocation is we can no longer think of technological, political, social, and cultural innovation as separate things. We have to bring all of this together when we're thinking about technological solutions. And I think that one of the most important things that I found, both in the research but also in the work at the lab, was that we really need to start fleshing out other type of urban imaginaries instead of going first head-on into tech-first solutions. So when I was working at the lab, this is more or less what a year of projects looked like for one of my team members. So it was a series of policy sweeps, legal changes, experiments, best practices, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that one of the most important lessons that instead of doing these specific innovations and specific projects, one of the things that we had to do is think about these urban imaginaries and the visions of a megalopolis. So how do you think about a pedestrian city, for example, which was one of my teams, or a playful city, which was another? Or as right now, working with the city of Bogota, how do you actually restructure a whole city instead of around GDP as things such as care? Like how do you think about care economies? How do you think about everything from, yes, new services and the ways that you bring your society together, but also even different type of land uses and a very different way of articulating the city as a whole. So I would like to offer up the idea that this is actually where technology can come in, that first we have to think about those visions of the city, and then we actually have to think about this technological layer, which can help articulate as well as amplify voices in incredibly powerful ways. Because again, I have the feeling that one of the things we really have to drive forward is that cities are cultural, social, political, and emotional beings. They're not computers. We have to use the right metaphors. And that we really need to flesh out as a society what those visions for a megalopolis or for a city can be. So one of the most interesting projects that I worked on in Mexico City was actually crowdsourcing the Mexico City Constitution, which was a first not only for us, but actually for the world, both in terms of having a constitution on the city level, but also being able to offer up many different modalities and a participatory scaffolding that was quite complex for people to participate. It really gathered quite a lot of attention the world over. And I think one of the interesting things was that technology most definitely served as one of these super powerful platforms to have a megalopolis, like one of the largest cities in the world, be able to add so many voices. Just like, for example, in one of the ways that you could participate when we had allyship going on with change.org, we had more than 500,000 people participating in crowdsourcing the Constitution. One of the other things that we also did, also using technology in a very different way, also for the Constitution, was creating what we call the Urban Imaginary Survey, which actually asked 31,000 people across 1,400 neighborhoods, basically their big loves and their big hates of Mexico City, and also a very simple but powerful question of how did they imagine the future of the city. So we had a legion of people going into the city and creating like these digital kiosks, if you will, and being able to hit the marketplaces and to be able to talk to families and creating social media impressions and whatnot, and really trying to figure out how can we bring in this thermometer of the city, which again, like reached more than 31,000 people. And all of this made its way into the Mexico City Constitution. And through all of these participatory scaffoldings, as well as a team that the mayor had put together of 28 experts, and then a constitutional process, Congress, that happened with 100 extra people. The Mexico City Constitution right now is not only a series of aspirations and ideals of a city, so these urban imaginaries that I was speaking about, but it is also like a host of incredibly interesting and progressive legal rights that Mexico City citizens now have. And this is everything from the right to euthanasia, to the right to abortion, to incredibly sophisticated gay rights, gay marriage, gay abortion, and even one of the most sophisticated transsexual rights in the whole continent. Indigenous rights, the right to the city, the right to mobility, which is also the first time that it was in a constitutional level. And I think what this points to is that governance, the subject that brings us to the table today is very much, yes, about distributing power and agency. In this case, we actually were able to create arguably the most important legal document that a city can have, bringing in a lot of voices. But we should not forget that this is also about democratizing imagination in many ways, and those urban imaginaries that I spoke out at the beginning. So also at the lab, we did several projects to work on this, such as platforms where citizen-led projects could actually be found very simply and geolocated across the city. We also created platforms for crowd law, in which we drafted part of the Constitution, as well as a road safety plan for Mexico City, the way that Uber was regulated. We also, through technology, had more than 4,000 citizens and 700 teams helping us with a citywide game to crowdsource the first map of the largest informal bus system in the world, which was called Mapaton. And I think one of the really interesting things to think about nowadays is, besides these specific projects and these specific tools, how can the city itself become that enabler of ideas? Like, how do the layers of technology in the urban actually intersect in different ways that could point towards different futures of thinking about governance? So I think there's several examples already out there, but I think that this is only the beginning. This, for example, is a project done by an amazing artist from Mexico called Rafael Lozano Gemer. This is the main square in Mexico City. And what he did was create a platform where anybody could use the system of lights across the city to create messages, to make images, to play with the lighting that was happening. And so it was really interesting because there were very political messages that were created with this, but also I think it was more than 28 marriage proposals. So it's both political and social. There's also really interesting things that happened in Brazil during the lockdowns, where a lot of people, through several collectives, especially the Projectemos collective in Brazil, were using their own equipment to actually be able to display these huge images and huge phrases across the city of Sao Paulo that then actually got replicated back in social media and whatnot. So the city itself became this place of civic occupation, if you will, and of visuals where people could everything from give themselves hope to create political messaging, artistic interventions and whatnot, which I also think is a really fantastic way of thinking about governance and distribution. Some other examples by Mexican artist Gilberto Esparza. These are called urban parasites, and they can live on their own. They kind of like leech the electricity of the city, and if you try to touch them, they run away, the first three of them. And they function in different ways. They kind of like hide within the urban atmosphere. And at the same time, I think that this is an interesting provocation to think, like, what would happen if we also thought of these as this digital interface with the city that can also be have a very different ways of thinking about governance and thinking about urban digital infrastructure. Because I actually think that digital infrastructure has to also be civic infrastructure and symbolic infrastructure, cultural infrastructure, and political as well. So what can cities like Berlin and cities the world over start thinking about? I think this is very much about offering a collective vision, about being able to place within the midst of civil society as well as government open knowledge systems so that we can learn how to learn together, and think about as well as the urban commons and how cities themselves can become the test beds for experimentation, how they can become the civic infrastructure, and how do we actually share resources of all sorts, like knowledge resources, talent resources, symbolic resources, financial resources, to think about the city that we want and the city that we could be. And this, I think, is one of the most interesting things that we could do, is change the vocabulary from efficiency, productivity, seamlessness, which are our smart city biases and are important, don't get me wrong. But how can we also add play, curiosity, communality, culture to the conversation happening in the digital realm and in this interface, as I mentioned, with cities? Thank you very much.
Thank you.